I've spent most of my life under a spotlight I didn't choose, but today the light is shining on something my father never wanted you to see. Hi, I'm Jill, and if you think the Duggar family is still a united front, you haven't seen the restricted files from Nebraska. On January 17th, my brother John David's birthday, my sister Jana did something none of us thought was possible. She gave birth to her first child, but she did it behind a wall of security that even Jim Bob couldn't break through. My synagogue was being exposed. I'm standing here today because I know what it's like to have your most private moments sold for a paycheck. But Jana, she just changed the rules of the game in the next hour, revealing the 15 secrets my father is desperate to bury, from the 4 a.m. hospital standoff to the truth about the 20 million audit that is tearing our family apart. This isn't just about a baby. It's about a rebellion. Stay with me, because the truth doesn't just set you free, it changes everything. When you grow up in the big house, you learn one thing very early: privacy is a luxury we weren't allowed to have. Every birth, every tear, every major life milestone was treated like a production schedule. But on the morning of January 17th, 2026, my sister Jana decided that the cycle of public consumption had to end. It started in the dark, quiet hours of the morning in Nebraska, while the rest of the world was sleeping. Silent alarm was going off within our family. Jana was in labor, but unlike the births you saw on TV, there were no camera crews in the hallway. There were no lighting kits being set up. There was only a woman, her husband Stephen, and a medical team sworn to absolute secrecy. However, secrets have a way of traveling back to Arkansas. By 3:30 a.m., Jim Bob had received word. And we don't know exactly who leaked the location, but we know the reaction was immediate. My father has always believed that he is the gatekeeper of the Duggar legacy. To him, a new grandchild isn't just a family member, it's a brand asset. And with the family's public image currently under fire from a massive $20 million forensic audit, he desperately needed a good news story to flip the script. He arrived at the Nebraska hospital at exactly 4:12 a.m. According to staff members who were on duty, he didn't walk in like a grandfather. He walked in like a man who owned the building. He had 2 phones in his hand, and he was already talking about logistics. He expected to be ushered straight into the delivery suite. He expected to be the first one to hold that baby for a coordinated social media post. But for the first time in his life, the Duggar name didn't open the door. At the security desk, he was met with a cold reality. Jana and Stephen had prepared for this. They knew the patterns. They knew the pressure. They had provided the hospital with a restricted access list. My father's name was at the very top of that list. Can you imagine the scene? The patriarch of the most famous large family in America being told by a 20-something security guard that he was not authorized to enter. Witnesses say he was stunned. He tried to use his usual charm, then his authority, and finally his frustration. He demanded to speak to the head of nursing. He claimed it was a family emergency, but the security guard didn't budge. Jana had established an iron wall. She had given strict orders. No one enters without a pre-approved pass. Not even the grandfather. This wasn't just a daughter being difficult. This was Jana taking back her power. For years, Jana was the one who stayed behind. She was the one who raised the younger kids. She was the one who managed the big house while the rest of us moved on. She saw the cost of fame up close, and she decided her son would not pay that price. For 2 hours, Jim Bob sat in that sterile waiting room. He wasn't praying, he was pacing. He was making frantic calls to my brothers, trying to get someone to intervene. But the phones remained silent. The siblings who used to follow his every command were finally choosing a side. And they chose Jana. As the sun began to rise over the Nebraska plains, the realization finally set in. He was no longer in control. The cameras were gone. The contracts were void. And his eldest daughter had officially declared her independence. By 6:00 a.m., Jim Bob Duggar walked out of those sliding glass doors, empty-handed and alone. Inside, Jana was preparing to bring a new life into a world where he would finally be free. This standoff was the first shot fired in what we now know as the Great Duggar Civil War. And as you're about to hear in the next segment, the timing of this birth wasn't just a coincidence. It was a calculated message sent straight to the heart of the big house. In our family, dates have always been more than just numbers on a calendar. They were marketing opportunities. We grew up knowing that a birthday meant a special episode, a specific social media push, or a chance to show the world how perfectly synchronized our lives were. But what happened on January 17th was something no one, not even my father, could have scripted. January 17th. Most of you know it as a special day for the Duggars already. It's the birthday of my brothers, the twins, John David and Josiah. For decades, this day was reserved for them. It was a day of celebration at the big house, filled with ice cream, giant banners, and the usual filmed festivities. But this year's, the atmosphere was different. There was a tension in the air that felt like a storm was about to break. And at the center of that storm was Jana. And when the news started trickling out that Jana had gone into labor on the twins' actual birthday, people called it a beautiful coincidence. But if you know the history between Jana and John David, you know it's much deeper than that. Jana and John David are the original twins of the family. They shared everything growing up. They were each other's support system in a house where individual attention was hard to find. By choosing, or perhaps being destined to bring her son into the world on this specific day, Jana did something symbolic. She reclaimed the date being exposed. She took a day that was owned by the Duggar brand and turned it into a day of personal liberation. But there's a darker side to this mystery. And what happened to the public was sending happy birthday messages to John David. My father was reportedly trying to use the coincidence to force his way back into the narrative. We've heard that he wanted to announce the birth as a twin birthday miracle. He wanted to link the past generation, his sons, to the new generation in a way that he could control. He wanted that headline. He wanted that magazine cover. But Jana said no. She refused to let her son's birth be a subplot in a twin birthday special. Because my sources tell me that Jana had actually discussed this months ago. She wanted her child to have his own identity, far away from the IBLP teachings that prioritize the family unit over the individual soul. By delivering on January 17th in a hospital that my father was banned from, she effectively cut the cord between the old legacy and the new one. And then there's the mystery of the timing. Why was there a total blackout on social media from the rest of the siblings? Usually, when a Duggar baby is born, the Instagram posts are instantaneous. Welcome to the world. Nephew, so proud of you, sister. But today, silence. A heavy, meaningful silence. It's because the siblings are caught in a crossfire. They are celebrating the twins' birthday in Arkansas while their hearts and their secret messages are in Nebraska with Jana. My brother John David, the man whose birthday it actually is, has been unusually quiet. Insiders say he is the one who has been the most supportive of Jana's decision to keep Jim Bob away. Imagine that, the birthday boy himself standing in solidarity with a sister who is hiding from their own father. This date, January 17th, will now forever be remembered as the day the Duggar dynasty officially split. It's no longer just a birthday for the twins. It's Independence Day for Jana's son. As we move into the next segment, we're going to look at the Iron Wall, the specific security measures and the legal documents that Jana used to ensure that the man who raised her would never be able to claim ownership of her child. This is where the story turns from a family mystery into a full-blown legal standoff. If there's one thing you need to understand about the big house in Tontatown, it's that no was never an acceptable answer for my father. For decades, his word was the law, whether it was choosing our clothes, our friendships, or the way we raised our own children. His influence was always there. But on this cold Nebraska morning, Jana did something that shattered that illusion of control. She didn't just say no. She hired a security detail to enforce it. According to those inside the hospital, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Jana and Stephen Wissmann didn't just rely on the hospital's standard protocols. They had hired private security professionals whose only job was to ensure that Jana's birth plan was followed to the letter. And item number 1 on that birth plan, no unauthorized visitors. Specifically, no Jim Bob Duggar. Imagine the scene at the double doors of the maternity ward. My father is standing there, probably wearing that same everything is fine smile he uses for the cameras. He's used to being recognized. He's used to people stepping aside because he's Jim Bob. But these guards didn't care about his TV show. They didn't care about his political past. They had a list, and he wasn't on the approved side. The standoff lasted for what felt like an eternity. Sources say Jim Bob didn't just walk away. He tried to negotiate. He tried to claim that as the legal grandfather, he had rights to be there. But in the state of Nebraska and in the eyes of the law, a woman's medical privacy is absolute. Jana had exercised her right to choose who shares her most vulnerable moments. But why such extreme measures? Why the security? Why the ban? It's because Jana has spent 35 years watching how my father handles milestones. She saw how every birth in our family was treated like a press junket. She saw how the intimate, sacred moment of a child's arrival was commodified for TLC ratings of social media engagement. She knew that if she didn't have a physical barrier, my father would find a way to make himself the center of the story. But there's another layer to this. The security wasn't just there to keep him out of the room, exposed. They were there to keep his influence out of the room. Jana wanted her son's first breaths to be in an environment of peace, not an environment of performance. She wanted a space where she didn't have to worry about a camera lens or a pre-written script. When the guards finally escorted him back toward the elevators, being exposed, it was the loudest no he had ever heard. It sent a message through the entire family grapevine. The old rules no longer apply. You can't buy your way into Jana's life anymore. You can't manipulate your way into her nursery. This security detail wasn't just a medical precaution. It was Jana's declaration of independence. It was the moment she built a wall around her new family that my father's money couldn't climb. And as we're about to see in the next segments, this hospital ban was just the tip of the iceberg. Because while Jim Bob was being blocked in the hallway, the real war was happening in the legal and financial records back in Arkansas. When people see a family like ours, they often think the biggest secrets are kept in the prayer closet. But in reality, the biggest secrets are usually kept in the ledger books. For years, my father, Jim Bob, has operated like the CEO of a media empire, and every one of us children was an employee, whether we knew it or not. But as Jana went into labor on January 17th, there was a shadow looming over the big house that had nothing to do with a new baby. It's the shadow of a 20 million forensic audit. Sources close to the family's legal battles have confirmed that at a massive investigation into the Duggar assets has been picking up speed in 2026. This audit isn't just about taxes. It's about the millions of dollars generated by counting on and 19 kids and counting that seemed to vanish into shell companies and trust funds controlled entirely by my father. You might be wondering, what does Audit have to do with a baby being born in Nebraska? The answer is everything. In the past, every time a scandal hit the family, whether it was my brother Josh's legal troubles or my own departure from the fold, Jim Bob would use a new baby announcement to clean the brand. He would sell the exclusive photos, secure the magazine covers, and use that revenue to fuel his legal defense funds. A new Duggar baby was quite literally a get out of jail free card, but Jana changed the game by establishing a security detail and a total media blackout. She didn't just protect her son's privacy. She cut off my father's access to a potential multi-million-dollar payday. Think about it. A secret birth on the twin birthday of John David and Josiah. That is a goldmine for a reality TV patriarch. If Jim Bob had been in that room, he could have packaged that story for a streaming special or a massive tabloid deal. He needed that money to fight the audit. He needed that distraction to keep the public from looking at the bank accounts. Instead, he was met with a restricted access sign. Jana moving to Nebraska and marrying Stephen Wissmann wasn't just a romantic choice. It was a strategic exit by delivering her child in a state where my father has no legal or financial foothold. She ensured that her son would never be listed as an asset in the Duggar family business. I've heard from insiders that the group chat among the siblings is on fire. Some are terrified that if Jim Bob loses this audit, the big house itself could be seized. They see Jana's move as the ultimate lifeboat. She's not just saving herself exposed. She's showing the rest of us that the only way to protect your children is to remove them from the brand entirely. The standoff at the hospital wasn't just a father and daughter disagreeing. It was a CEO trying to seize his most valuable product and a mother saying, "My son is not for sale." As the audit closes in, the walls of the big house are crumbling. And for Jana, the quiet of a Nebraska farmhouse is worth more than $20 million could ever buy. While the world was watching the standoff at the hospital doors in Nebraska, a different kind of drama was unfolding back at the big house in Arkansas. And at the center of it was my mom, Michelle. For 40 years, my mom has been the ultimate symbol of obedience in the Duggar household. She has stood by my father through every scandal, every legal battle, and every family crisis. But on the morning of January 17th, something shifted. For the first time, the bond between a mother and her daughter proved stronger than the rules of the big house. Reliable sources and several of my siblings' private messages confirm that Michelle was not with Jim Bob when he was turned away at the hospital. While he was pacing the waiting room in Nebraska, Michelle was reportedly making her own secret arrangements. She didn't take the family bus. She didn't take the family bus. She didn't announce her departure. Instead, she took a private, low-profile flight out of a local Arkansas airfield, heading straight for Nebraska. Why was it a secret? Because Jim Bob had reportedly issued a family directive. He wanted the entire family to stand in solidarity against Jana's decision to involve private security and keep him out. He wanted a total boycott until Jana repented and allowed him to manage the birth announcement. Michelle couldn't do it. She knew this was Jana's first baby, her eldest daughter, the one who had sacrificed her entire youth to help Michelle raise the other 18 of us. And Michelle knew she couldn't let Jana go through this alone, even if it meant defying the man she has called Sir for decades. When Michelle arrived at the hospital, the scene was completely different from Jim Bob's arrival because she wasn't on the banned list. Jana had left instructions. My mother is always welcome. This secret flight represents the biggest crack we have ever seen in the foundation of my parents' marriage. Michelle snuck away to support a daughter who had officially banned her husband. Think about the weight of that. It shows that even Michelle is starting to see that the control Jim Bob exerts is no longer sustainable. Inside that room, away from the cameras and away from my father's influence, Michelle finally got to hold her newest grandson. She didn't have to worry about the 20 million audit. She didn't have to worry about the IBLP modesty standards or the next filming schedule. For a few hours, she was just a grandmother. But the fallout back in Town is going to be massive. Jim Bob reportedly found out about the flight only after Michelle had landed. The group chat is buzzing with rumors of a total lockdown at the big house once she returns. Is this the moment Michelle finally follows in the footsteps of the Free Duggars? As we move into the next segment, we're going to look at the no-sell contract that Jana signed, a legal document that ensures this baby will never, ever appear on a TLC screen. Jana didn't just protect her room. She protected her son's entire future. If you've followed our family for long enough, you know that in the Duggar world, a baby isn't just a blessing, it's a contract. Growing up, our lives were tied to production schedules. Every major event, from our first words to our weddings, was owned by a TLC. We were told it was for ministry, but as I've shared in my own journey, many of us were signing away privacy for pennies while the brand made millions. But Jana, she just tore up the script. Reliable sources and whispers within the production industry have revealed something groundbreaking. Before her son was even born, Jana and Stephen signed what we call a no-sell agreement. This is a legal shield that explicitly prevents any footage, photos, or even mentions of their child from being used in any future Duggar-related reality specials or commercial deals. For years, my father used Jana as the anchor of the show. She was the one who kept the big house running. And what happened, the fans loved, the Cinderella who stayed, he assumed that when she finally had her own baby, it would be the ultimate ratings gold mine, the grand finale. He could sell to a network to pay off those mounting legal fees and audit costs. But Jana learned from our mistakes. She saw the toll that the spotlight took on the M kids, Josh's children. She saw how Jinger and I had to fight just to get control of our own narratives. And she decided that her son would never know what it feels like to have a boom mic over his crib. By signing this no-sell contract, Jana didn't just defy a network. She defied the very foundation of how Jim Bob operates. She removed the most valuable asset from his reach. Without Jana's baby to film, the Duggar 2.0 reboot that my father has been pitching is effectively dead. This contract is more than just legal paperwork. It's a message to our father that some things are truly sacred. It's a message that says, you can audit the past, you can fight over the 20 million, but you cannot have my son. But in a family where everything had a price tag, Jana just made her new life priceless. And as the audit closes back in Arkansas, this legal wall she's built around her nursery might be the most secure place in the entire Duggar orbit. My father might still be pacing the halls of the hospital, but he's already lost the war for the next generation's story. Oh, growing up in a family of 19, you rarely have a space that is truly yours. Everything is shared, from the clothes we wore to the beds we slept in. But as I look at the recent leaks of Jana's new nursery in Nebraska, I don't see the chaotic, crowded hallways of the big house. I see a mother who has finally created a sanctuary. The photos, which surfaced shortly after the standoff at the hospital, show a room that is a complete departure from the Duggar aesthetic we all know. There are no hand-me-down cribs from the 90s. Instead, Jana has used her incredible talent for design to create a space that feels like a clean slate. The nursery is filled with soft, neutral tones, creams, sage greens, and natural wood. It's elegant, it's modern, and most importantly, it's quiet. For Jana, this room isn't just for a baby. It's the physical manifestation of her freedom. After spending 35 years taking care of everyone else's children in Arkansas, she finally has a nursery where she is the only authority. But there's a detail in these photos that caught my eye, and it's something only a sister would notice. In the corner of the room, there's a small hand-crafted wooden rocking chair. Sources close to the Wissmanns say this was a gift from our brother, John David, the twin who shared this January 17th birthday with the new baby. It's a silent testimony of the support Jana has from her siblings, who have also chosen to step away from the big house's shadow. When these photos leaked, they didn't come from a tabloid or a paid camera crew. They were shared in small, private circles of friends of Jana who wanted the world to see that she is happy. She is safe and she is thriving. this nursery represents a new beginning, because it's the first room in Jana's life that Jim Bob didn't have a key to. For the fans who have followed Jana's journey for decades, these images bring a sense of peace. We saw her as the Cinderella for so long, always the bridesmaid, always the helper. To see her now in her own home in Nebraska, rocking her own son in a room she designed herself, it's the ending and the beginning we all prayed for. In our family's culture, the father is often seen as the ultimate authority until the very end. But when Jana married Stephen Wissmann, she didn't just find a husband. She found a partner who was willing to draw a line in the sand that my father couldn't cross. Stephen comes from a large musical family in Nebraska, but they operate very differently from the Duggars. They value privacy, hard work, and genuine connection over media spectacles. And as Jana's pregnancy progressed toward that January 17th due date, Stephen made it very clear that things were going to be done differently this time. I've heard from those close to the couple that Stephen delivered what can only be described as an ultimatum to my father. It wasn't an act of anger, but an act of protection. The message was simple. This is Jana's birth, not a TLC production. If you cannot respect our boundaries, you cannot be part of the moment. For a man like Jim Bob, who is used to vetting everyone with questionnaires and controlling every narrative, being given an ultimatum by a son in law was a massive shock. Stephen wasn't just speaking for himself. He was standing as a shield for Jana. He saw the stress she carried from years of being the public daughter, and he was determined that her first experience as a mother would be defined by peace, not pressure. This ultimatum is what led to the hiring of the security detail we discussed earlier. Stephen knew that a verbal agreement wouldn't be enough to stop my father's persistence. He took the extra step to ensure that Jana's wishes were legally and physically enforced at the hospital. When Jim Bob showed up at 4 a.m., he wasn't just fighting a hospital policy. He was hitting the wall that Stephen Wissmann had built. Stephen's refusal to back down, even when faced with my father's patriarchal authority, has set a new standard for the men in our family. It showed that you can be a man of faith and still stand up to a controlling system to protect your wife and child. As Jana held her baby boy for the first time, she did so knowing that her husband had her back. The Wissmann wall held firm, and as we move into the next segment, we'll see how this act of defiance sent shockwaves through the rest of the siblings, leading to an explosion in the family's private group chat that no one saw coming. Growing up, our family group chats were mostly for coordinating schedules or sharing prayer requests. But lately, as the walls of the big house have started to crumble, those chats have turned into a digital battlefield. And on the morning of January 17th, when news hit that Jana had officially banned my father from the hospital, that chat finally exploded. You have to understand the dynamic. For years, there has been a divide between the siblings who still follow my father's every command and those of us who have chosen to walk a different path. But Jana's birth brought everyone to the table, sources close to the family. And trust me, the leaks are coming from inside the house now. Say the messages started flying as soon as Jim Bob left the hospital empty-handed, exposed. Some of the brothers, the ones still financially dependent on the family business, were reportedly shocked. They were calling it disrespectful and unbiblical to keep the patriarch away from a birth. But then the sisters took over. Jinger, speaking from Los Angeles, was one of the first to jump in. She has always been Jana's confidante, and she made it clear Jana is an adult woman. Her piece is more important than a photo up. Then there was Joy, Anna, and Jessa, who are usually more careful with their words. They found themselves caught in the middle, trying to balance their loyalty to my mom and dad with their deep love for Jana. The explosion happened when one of the brothers reportedly tried to guilt trip Jana into apologizing to Jim Bob so he could film a reunion segment. That's when the silence was broken. I'm told that even some of the younger siblings, who usually stay quiet, started liking the messages that supported Jana's independence. For the first time, Jim Bob's flying monkeys, the people he uses to exert control when he's not in the room, were losing their grip. The group chat became a space of rebellion. People were sharing their own stories of how they felt pressured during their own life events. It was like a dam had broken. This isn't just a family argument. It's a total shift in the power structure. The siblings are no longer a monolith. They are individuals with their own voices. And by standing up for herself in Nebraska, Jana gave everyone else the permission they needed to speak their own truth in Arkansas. As we move into the next segment and what happened in my life and being exposed, we're going to look at what the forensic accountant actually found in those $20 million of records. Because while the siblings were fighting in the chat, the lawyers were finding the real reason why my father was so desperate to get back into Jana's good graces. While the hospital drama was capturing everyone's attention, a much more silent and dangerous battle was happening in the world of finance. For over a year, forensic accountants have been digging through 20 years of Duggar records, and what they've found is staggering. And what happened in my life, we're talking about nearly $20 million in earnings that never reached the children who earned them. The audit revealed a complex web of shell companies. My father didn't just collect the checks. He moved them through entities like Mad Family Inc. and various real estate trusts. The investigation shows that while we were told we were working for the family ministry, the money was being used to build a private empire that none of us had keys to. Jana's decision to ban him from the hospital was likely fueled by her knowledge of these findings. She knew that any photo of her baby wasn't just a memory. It was a way for him to replenish the accounts the auditors are now freezing. The difference between Jana's life now and her life at the big house is like night and day. The Tonatown compound was a place of surveillance, cameras in the corners, no locks on the bedroom doors, and a constant on-air feeling. Her new farmhouse in Nebraska is the opposite. It's so surrounded by miles of open fields and protected by a husband who values her silence over her fame. Jana has traded the Cinderella role for a life of genuine craftsmanship. She's gardening for herself and decorating for herself. And for the first time, she's not responsible for 18 other siblings. This farmhouse isn't just a home, it's a fortress where the Duggar rules don't apply. Here, the only authority is love and mutual respect, something the big house simply couldn't provide. The IBLP, the organization that shaped our upbringing, taught us that a father's umbrella of protection was absolute. To step out from under it was to invite disaster. By banning Jim Bob from the delivery room, Jana didn't just break a family rule, she committed a spiritual sin in the eyes of that organization. But Jana has realized what many of us have, that umbrella was actually a cage. By giving birth on January 17th, and keeping it private, she proved that God's blessing isn't tied to a patriarch's approval. She is breaking the cycle of umbrella theology, ensuring her son grows up in a world where his value isn't tied to how well he obeys an earthly king, but how he follows his own heart art. People often ask where John David stands in all this. Since it was his birthday on January 17th, the pressure on him was immense. But John David has always been the quiet strength in Jana's life. Sources say he was one of the few siblings who knew about the banned list beforehand and fully supported it. He didn't make a big post. He didn't film a reaction. Instead, he chose to celebrate his birthday by honoring his twin sister's privacy. His silence on social media was actually the loudest message he could send to Jim Bob. I choose my sister over your brand. This bond between the original twins is the one thing Jim Bob can't manipulate. With the 20 million audit tightening and the no-sell contracts preventing new revenue, the rumors of a financial collapse at the big house are growing louder. For the first time, there is real talk of bankruptcy. Without the income from the kids and with mounting legal fees, the empire is overextended. The big house, which was once a symbol of Duggar success, is now becoming a gilded cage. If the auditors find evidence of tax evasion or fraud, the very roof over my parents' heads could be at risk. Jana's move to Nebraska wasn't just for a new life. It was an exit strategy before the ship sinks. As we close this hour, the message is clear. Jana Duggar's secret birth wasn't a scandal, it was a victory. It was the moment a woman who gave everything to her family finally chose herself. On January 17th, a new life began, not just for the baby, but for Jana. She showed us that you can walk away. You can say no, you can protect your peace, even if it means banning the most powerful person in your life from the room. The Duggar era of control is over. The era of freedom has begun. My name is Jill, and thank you for seeking the truth with me. The best is yet to come.